So welcome back to Dickin' Around Outdoors. Today, we are going to do a first look at a Snow Peak tent, and this is likely the longest lead time on any video we've ever done. Snow Peak was kind enough to send this to us last year, and unfortunately, this tent was trapped in that Grenadier when it got hit in Baja and spent a year in San Diego. So we're now finally getting to the point where we're going to take a look at this tent. And what we have today is we have the Amenity Dome medium-sized tent. We've also got some accessories that we're going to show you once we get the tent set up. But first off, let's have a look and see what comes in the bag. We're going to show you the features of the tent once it's set up. So the first thing you notice, it comes with quite a roomy bag. I'll be curious to see how roomy it is once we set this up. And inside, you have the instruction sheet on care, maintenance, and I'm sure how to set it up. You have a bag of poles, a bag of what feels like stakes, and guy lines. And I'm going to do something with these guy lines before we set the tent up that I do with all my tents. I'll show you what that is just because I like to do that. And then we also have the body of the tent and the Rainfly, and this is the ivory color. So let's get this set up, see what it looks like. All right, we've unpacked the poles, and there are 4. 2 of them have a gold yellow accent to them. One of them has a green accent, and one has no accent at all. And one of the things that Snow Peak does very well is that they try to make these easy to set up. So on the sleeves, there's actually a color coding. The yellow for the yellow poles, a green pole, and then the no color pole does not go on the body of the tent. So let's unwrap these poles. We'll get them through the sleeves and see what the body of the tent looks like. And one thing that Snow Peak does is they use the pin that goes inside of the tent pole. So we've got our first one in. Let's go ahead, get the second one in, and then we'll get a look at what this tent looks like. All right, we have the 2 cross poles, what Snow Peak in their instructions calls the X poles. Those are both in, and you can see this tent is a much more sort of traditional design than the Alpha Breeze. If you haven't seen that Alpha Breeze video, I'm going to post it up here. Next thing we need to do is we need to put the green post in, and that is called the side pole. And quite easily, it goes into the green sleeve. So let's get that started. And I'm doing this by myself. In the instructions, Snow Peak says 2 people should put this together, but so far it's not proving too difficult. All right, so we've got the cross pole sort of centered. And on the sides of the tent, there is a green tab with 2 more pins to insert into this pole. Next thing is pretty standard fare for tents these days. You just have clips that clip over the pole. Something a little bit unique with this tent, however, is the clip where the 2 cross actually has a place to clip both the poles in, which keeps it steady and connected like that. I have another tent that just has a big buckle that you have to put around those, so that's a pretty nice touch. And there you go. In less than 5 minutes, the body of the tent is set up. A couple things that stand out to me right away is these big, beefy aluminum tent poles that Snow Peak uses, and also the really roomy mesh sleeves for the poles. I've had some tents where the sleeves are so tight it makes getting the pole through hard. These were very easy, and the mesh will allow airflow. So this is what you get when you buy the tent, plus the Rainfly that you're going to put on. We're going to move this before we actually stake it down because we're pretty close to the fire pit. But the first accessory that I bought, Snow Peak didn't send me this, I bought it, is the ground cloth. So the tub on this tent is extremely thick, 210 denier. It's really thick. I mean, it's much thicker than most tents. So I believe Snow Peak's idea is that that floor is thick enough that the ground cloth is optional. But I always like a ground cloth just because it saves wear and tear on the tent and it keeps it cleaner. So I did get the ground cloth. We're going to stretch that out. We're going to move this tent away from the fire. Then we're going to stake it down, and then we'll put the fly on. Okay, we have the ground cloth laid out with Camera Lady's help. Since this is a freestanding tent, we're just going to lift it up, bring it over here, set it on the ground cloth, stake it down. And at this point, I think we see the first spot where Snow Peak has economized, and this is common amongst many mid-price tents. So this is not a knock on Snow Peak. This is pretty much the standard, but it comes with these cheaper shepherd hook aluminum stakes, which I've always found to be easy to bend and not really that practical. So I'm going to change these out. I'm going to get some groundhogs or something like that. And I'll post everything I talk about below. And I'm also going to use my trusty MSR Stake Hammer to pound these in. So let's get the tent stake down. And here's kind of a unique thing on this tent. This is used to stake out the fly and the vestibule. So you put a stake here as well. You get this tight. And that pin is used for the mystery pole that we saw earlier that didn't have any colors. So let's get the Rainfly on and show you how that hooks. And one thing, I'm looking at this wondering, does this become a type of trip hazard? We'll see. We don't know. But it's kind of odd having that strung out, but it may be a complete non-issue. We'll see. All right, one of the hardest things I always have when I'm setting up a tent is figuring out which way the Rainfly goes. And this one, it's a little bit easier. You do have color coding for the corners. There's also a green tab for the center. And on the back, you have a door, but you also have a vent. And so here's the vent. So this is the back of the Rainfly. So we're going to go ahead, slip this on, and get it snugged up. And before you actually clip the Rainfly in, on the inside where each one of the guy line connectors are, there is a Velcro strip. So you go ahead and you wrap that Velcro strip around the pole to keep the Rainfly from moving around too much. So we're going to do that before we clip it in. Very simple, just a little Velcro. And we have another one for the second guy line. And now we can clip in the corner. All right, and at this point, we use the last of the poles. This is going to frame up the vestibule. All right, we have the pole in the sleeve that's going to serve to frame out our vestibule. There is a second pin down here that we're going to pin it into. By framing this out, we go to the pin on the frame here and set it up. And there we have the frame of the vestibule. Now we have to stake that out. And there are, well, a couple things at this point. You want to make sure your doors are zipped when you stake these out. Otherwise, you might not get them zipped. And there are places to stake both the side frame and the door. So we're going to stake out first the side on both doors or on both sides. And there are times when reading the manual does come in handy. And what we thought might be a trip hazard actually, once the tent is staked out, gets disconnected, wrapped up. Whoop, hello, Linda. Gets disconnected, wrapped up, and then just stored right here in a little pouch. So the trip hazard is no more. So we went ahead and we staked out both the door and the wall in the back. We don't know if we're going to have to open this for ventilation tonight. And then also the vent in the back does have a Velcro closure. And like a lot of the tents, it has the little prop that you can prop the vent open. We're going to go ahead and do that because we know we're going to want some ventilation. So that's open. Now we need to tighten up the fly, and I'll show you what I did with those guy lines. So this tent comes with 3 distinct guy lines. And what I've done, and I like to do this to all my tents, is instead of tying these guy lines to the tent, and then every time you put the tent away, you're tripping over ropes or stepping on them, I actually put small carabiners on the end, and I attach these to the tent with the carabiners. And when I take the tent down, I just take the guy line off, I wrap it up, and I put it in a Ziploc. And I've actually, because I had 2 different colors, the shorter lines that go in the back, I've put the orange on. The center lines, I've put the green on, and the front, which actually has 2 guys, I've put the green on as well. And I'll link these carabiners below. These have really worked well for me. So let's get these guyed out. All right, and at this point, we have everything guyed down. You can see there's 4 ropes on each side of the tent. And we're good to go. I hope you can see how easy it is when you have those carabiners just to clip this on, pull them off when you're done, and you don't get everything tangled up. All right, so here's the tent as it comes. As I said, we do have the optional footprint under it. And I have another option that I want to show you that we first experienced on our Alpha Breeze review, and that is this, which is a thin mattress pad that goes inside the tent. So when you're crawling around the tent at night, you don't get your knees whacking against rocks or branches or roots and things like that that are under the tent. It just makes it a little more plushy, a little nicer. As I said, this is a car camping, overlanding type tent. It is not something you're going to backpack with, so you can see this is rather large. But let's just get this put into the tent and show you how it fits. And I will tell you, it does make a difference in comfort inside these tents. And here we go. We've got the mattress pad inside the tent, and it's going to make sleeping much more comfortable. All right, the last accessory that we bought for this tent, and again, we picked these up on our own. Snow Peak did not supply these, are 2 poles that allow you to turn this door into a sun shelter. Now, it's not going to be a tall one where you're going to stand up under it, but you could most certainly put a low camp chair under it and sit. So to make this work, you simply take the pole through the grommet on the end, wrap your cord around it. You'll stake this out. And here we go. On that blistering hot day, we can get under here, get into some shade. I do have the extended legs on the Kermit chair. Normally it would sit lower so my head wouldn't be so close to the top. But as you can see, any small camp chair, you can fit under here very easily. You could cook under here. You could have a cocktail under here. In fact, if it's raining, I think you could probably sit under here when it's raining. So, kind of a nice little feature here. We're going to sleep in the tent tonight. We're going to give you an idea of what we think. It's a little humid today. We'll see if we get a bunch of condensation. We'll see how it vents. But as of right now, here is the Amenity Dome. We've spent our first night in the Amenity Dome medium, and I wanted to give you our impressions and talk a little bit about the features of the tent. First off, the Amenity Dome medium is what Snow Peak would call a 4-person tent. And this is a large footprint. In fact, I think that it is bigger on the inside than it looks like from the outside. So you've got a lot of good living space in here. There was more than enough room for Camera Lady and I and our gear in the tent last night. So I think even the Amenity Dome Small, which is 2-person, would still be a very nice size tent. And you can see that the floor is a tub floor and the seams are sealed. So it does wrap up and around, which in the event of heavy rain or any waterlog, that your floor is going to keep you dry. From a ventilation standpoint, there is just 1 vent in the roof that you can zip up to any amount of opening you want, depending on how far you unzip it. And right above that is the vent on the outside of the Rainfly that you can open. The doors are D-shaped doors, the front and rear door, and you are able to unzip the inside layer and have your mesh, or with the door inside layer attached, You can use the other zippers to completely open the door. And one nice thing on this tent, and I've noticed it on our other Snow Peak tent, is on some tents that we've had, when you open this door, you get to this part here where it makes the corner and it won't go. It starts to bunch up like this. So you have to grab the tent, you have to spread it out and unzip it. The Snow Peak doesn't. The zippers work smoothly around the corners. That is nice. The other feature on the inside door is that you are able to unzip the bottom part of it, roll it up. There are tabs and clips that you can then have some air movement coming into the tent from the bottom and expelling out the top. So that's a nice touch as far as getting ventilation into the tent. So all of those, I think, are really good features of this tent. They're really nice. They speak of high quality, and they're very useful features. Now, a couple things on the tent that I think Snow Peak might have missed the boat on. Well, actually, it's one thing, two components, is storage. So if you look at the top, you've got tabs to mount an attic, but they don't include the attic with it. So you can't get that. It's not an accessory. They don't make it, but you have tabs for an attic. So you have no storage at the top of the tent. Also, on the sides, where frequently or often you would see storage cubbies sewn into all four corners of the tents or all four sides, in the amenity dome, you only have two. You have one on each side by the main door, and that is a limited amount of storage, particularly if you have 4 people in here. Although it's split into 4 components, when you start putting phones, wallets, car keys, that sort of thing, it's kind of handy to have one that's close to where everybody wants to be. So I think that they could have put in more storage inside the tent. And that, again, is a common theme I've seen with the Snow Peak tents that we've used. After our first night in the Snow Peak Amenity Dome Medium, kind of what is our take? What do we like about it? What do we think Snow Peak could have done better? So let's just start with what we liked. First off, pitching it was very easy. Snow Peak's use of the color-coded poles really is helpful. If you're not familiar with the tent, it went up easy. We were able to move it around easily. Self-supporting design, which you would expect. So from that standpoint, I really thought it was a nice, easy tent to set up. Number 2, this vestibule in the front is awesome. It's huge. So if you had the front flap down, you could store a lot of gear inside of this vestibule and keep it dry in inclement weather. The fact that it has the second door that you can get in and out of while the front is down is really a nice touch. And the fact that it has a back door, so you have 2 entries and exits. If you had 4 people in the tent sleeping, the fact that there were 2 ways to get in and out makes it better. I mean, if you have to get up in the middle of the night, if nature calls, you don't have to crawl over everybody to get out if you happen to be in the back of the tent. So that part was good. The shape of the tent, I think, is a really good design from the standpoint of shedding wind. The guy points are well sorted out to keep it stable. I like this front cover. It's not very tall, so let's first get over that. You're not walking in and out under this. You do have to crouch down, but if you've got some sun, if you're looking for some shade, as you saw with our smaller camp chairs, you can sit under this flap and you can stay out of the sun. You can do your cooking, you can relax. So I think that's a super nice touch, even though you can't walk in and out. The material that the tent is made out of is really top notch. This 200 plus denier floor is robust as it comes. It's one of the top floors that I've seen in tents. So I think if you didn't want to pony up for the mat and ground cloth, I think you would be fine. I think this is a robust floor that's going to last. The back vestibule is small, so you can store boots, that sort of things under it, but you're not going to get a lot of gear. But you do have two vestibules, which I like. And the vent with its ability to prop open is nice. It's not unique to Snow Peak by any means. A lot of tent manufacturers use this, but it is a nice touch. The material on the inside of the tent is kind of a soft feeling material. It feels quality. The no-seam mesh is nice. And the fly material, as you would expect in a tent of this quality, is a hydrophobic material, which means that it is going to repel rain, which should seem obvious when it comes to rainflies, but some tents do have a material that sort of saturates with water before it starts shedding, and that makes it sag. This tent won't do it. And the quality of the poles, these are robust poles. They're strong aluminum, they're heavy, I shouldn't say heavy, they're large diameter and very robust poles, so very strong tent poles. So as you can tell, we think that the Amenity Dome is a top-notch tent. It's really high quality, and I think it's going to last for a number of years. But nothing is perfect. So what do we think that Snow Peak could have improved upon on the Amenity Dome? First off, let's talk about an item that I talked about during the Alpha Breeze as well. The guy lines are not reflective. I think that it would always be a nice touch if your guy lines, when they're staked out, are reflective so that you're not tripping over them at night. It's a small step to take, but I think it makes a huge difference. So I would say that's the number one item that I would like to see Snow Peak do. Number two, the zipper pulls on the doors. I like those if they are glow in the dark. Fumbling around with the zippers in the dark, particularly if you have two sets of zippers, which are nice functionally, but in the dark can be confusing. Luckily, I had a flashlight on my watch. I could find them, but I did have to turn the light on. If they were glow in the dark, I think it would be much easier to get in and out of the tent, and it's a classy addition. And the last item on the list is something that, should I ding Snow Peak or not? I mean, for the value, for the $400 that you pay for this tent, you're getting a very high quality tent. And if they didn't offer accessories, you wouldn't miss them. So you wouldn't even know that you needed them or wanted them. But now that they offer them, you know that you want them. Or at least I did. So the fact that you have to pay for the footprint doesn't bother me. But the fact that you cannot buy the footprint without also buying the mat, I would prefer to be able to buy them separately. And then, of course, the awning poles are another separate accessory that you have to buy. Can you use the tent without it? Of course you can. If you buy it, does it make the tent more versatile? Absolutely. So again, it's another accessory that you have to buy. I think it's worth it, but it's just something that's extra. Now, having said that, and I want to be completely fair to Snow Peak, as I mentioned earlier, if we didn't know that these existed, we wouldn't even want them. But now that we know, we do want them. And Snow Peak does offer the tent as a bundle with the accessories at a discounted price. So when you consider that for an extra $150, you're talking about, I believe, for this tent, $550 with all the accessories, then it starts making more sense. So Snow Peak does understand that people might want all the accessories but not want to pay for them separately, and the bundle is a nice touch. So I might be a little bit unfair talking about the accessories because you can buy the tent without them, which is also a nice touch because if you don't want them, you don't have to pay for them. So either way you want it, with or without the accessories, Snow Peak has you covered. One other thing that I will say, and this is not unique to Snow Peak, this is pretty much all tent manufacturers in the mid-price range, is the stakes. These are not really high quality tent stakes that are supplied with the tent. In fact, I think I have one bent on the other side. I'll know when I pull it out this morning. I hit a rock when I was putting it in. Um, I would expect that anybody that's going to use this with any frequency is going to be changing these stakes. Whether you buy Snow Peak's better stakes that they sell, or you get something like the MSR groundhogs, which we use, I think you will be looking at buying some new tent stakes. But again, that's not unique to Snow Peak. I think every manufacturer supplies the same tent stakes. All right, so having said all that, what is our final verdict on the Snow Peak Amenity Dome tent? Well, I think you can tell at this point that we are a fan of this tent. It's a super well-made tent, particularly when you're considering the $400 price tag. It is a 3-season tent, so you can tell by the way the Rainfly does extend up a little bit from the ground that this is not made to help handle a snow load. So if you're looking for a deep winter tent, this is not going to be it. But if you want a 3-season tent that has good ventilation, that has a lot of sort of unique features that you can use in sunshine if you're out somewhere where it's not covered with trees like we are today, having that awning is a very nice touch. And overall, the quality of the materials, the Snow Peak lifetime warranty, if something does go haywire with this tent, they will cover it. So if you are in the market for a mid-price tent, and in all fairness, $400 is a mid-price tent, the Amenity Dome should be on your shopping list to compare and to see if this fits your needs. We also did a test on the Alpha Breeze, and we're hoping to do a comparison test between the two tents. But I think either one of these you would pick based on what your requirements are and what type of tent you like. You couldn't go wrong. And I think you would love these tents for a long, long time. So, as always, if you like this type of content and like hearing about new outdoor gear, or gear that we have had for a while that we are just getting around to testing, sadly, please hit that sub button in the lower right-hand corner, give us a thumbs up, and share this content with your like-minded friends. And as always, take care, and we'll see you outdoors.